The 1980s were the golden years of wrestling, where larger-than-life superstars ruled the ring. But among them stood a man who made even giants look small, Big John Studd. He wasn't just big, he was massive. At nearly 7 feet tall and over 360 pounds, he was a force no one could ignore. When Studd walked into the ring, people believed he was unstoppable. He crushed opponents, took on legends like Andre the Giant, and made a name for himself as one of the most dominant villains in wrestling history. He had it all: the size, the strength, the fame. But behind the spotlight, his greatest asset became his downfall. Studd's massive frame wasn't just intimidating, it was a burden. The pressure to stay bigger and stronger in an industry obsessed with size took its toll. The same body that made him famous was slowly breaking down, leading to a battle far more serious than anything he ever faced in the ring. In the end, it wasn't an opponent that defeated Big John Studd. It was something no one saw coming, a fight he never had a chance to win. How did one of wrestling's biggest stars go from being feared in the ring to facing the fight of his life? And could anything have saved him? This is the tragic true story of Big John Studd. Before he became known as Big John Studd, he was John William Minton, born on February 19, 1948, in Butler, Pennsylvania. Even as a young man, he stood out for his impressive size. But wrestling wasn't his first calling. He first served as a military police officer in the United States Army. With his towering frame, he naturally commanded authority, making him well-suited for the role. However, Minton wanted something more, something that would make him a household name. That opportunity came when he was introduced to Killer Kowalski, one of wrestling's most respected trainers. Unlike many big men who relied only on their size, Kowalski emphasized technical skills, teaching Minton the importance of ring psychology and in-ring movement. By 1972, he made his debut under the name The Mighty Minton in NWA Hollywood Wrestling. While his size was impressive, his persona didn't quite click with audiences. A few months later, he moved to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, WWF, now WWE, under the new ring name Chuck O'Connor. This was the start of his long journey in professional wrestling. From 1973 to 1975, Minton traveled across various territories, competing in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling and later in the AWA, American Wrestling Association. While he wasn't yet a major star, he began teaming with well-known names like Ric Flair, Super Destroyer, and Ivan Koloff. These partnerships helped him learn the business while refining his character. Despite his growing experience, he had yet to find the gimmick that would launch him to the top. His breakthrough came in 1976, when he returned to WWE as one half of the masked tag team The Executioners, alongside his former trainer, Killer Kowalski. Managed by Captain Lou Albano, The Executioners were a dominant force in the WWF Tag Team division, even winning the WWF Tag Team Championship. However, this success was short-lived. By 1977, Minton left WWE and went to NWA Texas, where he experimented with new ring names including Big John Studd and Captain USA. It was during this period that he began to fully embrace his identity as a wrestling giant. His biggest moment in Texas came when he defeated Bruiser Brody in a loser leaves town match, capturing the NWA American Heavyweight title. This cemented him as a top heel, but Studd was always looking for bigger opportunities. Throughout the late 1970s, he continued to wrestle across the country, making a name for himself as a monster heel, a villainous giant whose size alone intimidated opponents. By 1982, WWE came calling again, and this time, Studd was ready for the big leagues. Before we continue with the video and dive deeper into Big John Studd's legendary battles and struggles, I'd love to ask for your support. I'm working towards reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription would mean a lot. If you enjoy this content, consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps. All right, let's get back to it. By 1982, the wrestling world had changed. The WWF, formerly WWF, was growing fast under Vince McMahon's vision, and larger-than-life characters were becoming the foundation of the company. Big John Studd fit that mold perfectly. When Studd returned to WWF in November 1982, he was no longer searching for an identity. He had one. Gone were the masked gimmicks and forgettable personas. Now, He was a towering, unstoppable villain, a man designed to strike fear into the hearts of opponents and fans alike. With classy Freddie Blassie as his manager, Studd was positioned as one of the top heels in the company. Wrestling is built on rivalries, and Studd's feud with Andre the Giant would define his career. Andre was already a legend, but Studd was marketed as the only man who could physically challenge him. The WWF played up the idea that no one could body slam Studd, offering a $10,000 cash prize to anyone who could do it. Andre, being the biggest star in wrestling, was the one man fans believed could lift Studd off his feet. This set up a dramatic series of matches between the two giants. Whenever Andre attempted the slam, Blassie or Studd would interfere, ensuring the mystery remained. Their 1983 to 1985 rivalry was one of WWF's most profitable storylines, drawing huge crowds and making Studd a main event attraction. When WrestleMania 1 was announced for March 31, 1985, WWF needed marquee matches beyond the Hulk Hogan Mr. T main event. Enter Andre vs. Studd in a high-stakes body slam challenge, with the prize money now increased to $15,000. The match wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. Fans weren't waiting for a wrestling clinic, they wanted one thing. Could Andre slam Studd? When he finally did, Madison Square Garden erupted. In a symbolic moment, Andre grabbed the bag of cash and started tossing money into the crowd. But Bobby Heenan, who had replaced Blassie as Studd's manager, quickly stole it back. Though Studd lost, the moment cemented his place in WrestleMania history. He wasn't just another villain. He was a key part of WWF's biggest event ever. After WrestleMania, Studd's role evolved. He became part of Bobby Heenan's stable, aligning himself with King Kong Bundy. The two formed one of the most intimidating tag teams of the mid-1980s. Their goal? Destroy Andre the Giant once and for all. Their biggest moment came in 1986, when they ambushed Andre in the ring, attacking him viciously and cutting his hair. This shocking betrayal enraged fans, adding another layer of intensity to their long-running feud. Meanwhile, Studd and Bundy also targeted Hulk Hogan, WWF's Golden Boy. The two frequently faced Hogan in handicap matches, trying to take down the champion. But in the 1980s WWF, villains rarely won the big matches. Unlike his partner Bundy, who headlined WrestleMania 2 against Hogan, Studd was placed in the WWF vs. NFL Battle Royal. This match mixed wrestlers with professional football players, creating an unpredictable brawl. Studd had a standout moment when he eliminated NFL star William the Refrigerator Perry. However, Perry tricked Studd into shaking hands, then pulled him over the top rope, eliminating him. It was a humiliating loss played up for laughs and foreshadowed Studd's declining momentum. By late 1986, Studd's career was losing steam. He had been a dominant force for years, but WWF's landscape was evolving. New stars like the Ultimate Warrior and the British Bulldogs were rising, and even the company's big men were getting faster and more athletic. Tensions between Studd and Bundy started to show. The WWF hinted at a possible split, but instead of engaging in a rivalry with Bundy, Studd simply left wrestling in early 1987. No big retirement speech, no farewell match. He just walked away. After nearly 2 years away, Studd returned to WWF in December 1988. But something had changed. WWF was now filled with larger, faster, more athletic big men. Studd was still massive, but wrestlers like The Undertaker and Sid Vicious were redefining what a giant looked like. Most importantly, Andre the Giant was now a villain, aligned with Bobby Heenan. Studd refused to rejoin Heenan's group, instead choosing to return as a babyface, fan favorite. His biggest achievement in this run? Winning the 1989 Royal Rumble. While the Rumble wasn't as prestigious as it is today, it was still a huge moment in his career. But Studd's return never truly clicked. Without Heenan speaking for him, his interviews felt flat. He wasn't as fast or as strong as before, and younger wrestlers were now more agile than he was. His last major appearance came at WrestleMania 5, where he served as the special guest referee for a match between Jake the Snake Roberts and Andre the Giant. Shortly after, Stud quietly exited WWF again, this time for good. His retirement in 1989 wasn't just about wrestling. His health was starting to decline. Though no one knew it at the time, the battle of his life was just beginning. Big John Studd had spent his entire career using his gigantic size to his advantage. But what made him unstoppable in the ring also put him on a dangerous path, one that would ultimately cost him his life. By the time he left the WWF in 1989, Studd was already feeling the effects of years of physical wear and tear. Wrestling at his size was no easy feat. He had spent over a decade throwing his massive frame around the ring, absorbing thousands of impacts and pushing his body beyond its natural limits. The wrestling industry of the 1980s had an unspoken expectation. If you were a big man, you had to stay big. It wasn't just about being tall. Muscle mass mattered, and Studd was no exception. Like many wrestlers of the era, he was under pressure to maintain his enormous size, even if it meant turning to extreme measures. At 6 feet 10 inches and 360+ pounds, Studd was already a naturally large man. But competing against monsters like Andre the Giant and King Kong Bundy meant that size alone wasn't enough. Wrestlers in that era often relied on steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs to maintain their massive physiques and to recover from injuries more quickly. While Studd was never as vocal about steroid use as some of his peers, later reports, including statements from superstar Billy Graham, suggested that Studd used them heavily throughout his career. Graham, a longtime advocate against steroid abuse, later revealed that Studd had privately expressed regret over using them, believing they had contributed to his health decline. In the late 1980s, the risks of steroid use were becoming more widely known. Though it wasn't publicly discussed in wrestling at the time, medical experts had started linking long-term steroid use to severe health problems, including organ damage, hormonal imbalances, and even cancer. Unfortunately, for many wrestlers, the damage had already been done. After stepping away from wrestling, Studd tried to live a normal life. He had made good money in the WWF, so he didn't need to wrestle anymore. Instead, he focused on his family, spending time with his wife and children. He was finally able to enjoy the quiet life that wrestling never allowed him. But in autumn of 1993, Studd noticed something concerning: a lump in his armpit. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. It wasn't painful, and he felt fine otherwise. Still, he decided to get it checked out. That decision saved his life, at least for a while. Doctors discovered that Studd had a large tumor in his chest, and after further testing, they diagnosed him with Hodgkin's lymphoma, a form of cancer that affects the lymphatic system. The diagnosis was devastating. Hodgkin's lymphoma is treatable, but it can be aggressive, especially in cases where it isn't caught early. Studd immediately began chemotherapy, hoping to fight the disease. For a while, the treatment seemed to be working. The tumor began shrinking, and doctors were hopeful that Studd could make a full recovery. In fact, at one point, there were even discussions about him returning to wrestling within 6 months. But cancer is unpredictable. In 1994, the disease returned aggressively, spreading faster than before. His doctors recommended a bone marrow transplant, but there was a major problem. They couldn't find a matching donor. Without a suitable donor, Studd's options were limited. His doctors gave him the worst news possible. He likely had only a month to live. Despite the odds, Studd wasn't ready to give up. He opted for an experimental and highly dangerous procedure known as an autotransplantation. This involved using his own bone marrow, rather than relying on a donor. It was an extremely risky operation, with only a 7% success rate. But in an incredible twist, the procedure worked. The tumor disappeared, and Studd was able to return home. For a brief moment, it seemed like he had beaten the disease. His family and friends dared to hope that he had been given a second chance at life. But in September 1994, just months after his miraculous recovery, Studd suffered another setback. His lungs collapsed, and he was rushed back to the hospital. Despite receiving immediate medical attention, the cancer had already spread too far. His body was too weak to fight back, and doctors informed him that there were no more treatment options left. Even in his final days, Stud remained a fighter. He continued to push through the pain, refusing to let the disease defeat him without a fight. But on March 20th, 1995, after a relentless battle with cancer, Big John Studd passed away peacefully. He was just 47 years old. Big John Studd was one of wrestling's great giants, a man whose size and strength made him a legend. But in the end, the same massive frame that defined his career may have also contributed to his downfall. The wrestling business of the 1980s glorified larger-than-life physiques, often encouraging wrestlers to push their bodies beyond safe limits. Studd was part of that system, a system that took countless other wrestlers far too soon. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, British Bulldog, many of his peers from that era suffered severe health issues later in life. Some, like Warrior and Bulldog, didn't survive past their 50s. Studd's death was yet another warning sign that wrestling's obsession with size came at a price. Unfortunately, in the 1980s, that price was not yet fully understood. Though his life was cut short, Big John Studd's legacy remains. He was a WrestleMania pioneer, a monster heel, and one of the few men who could stand toe-to-toe with Andre the Giant. In 2004, nearly a decade after his passing, WWE honored him by inducting him into the WWE Hall of Fame. It was a fitting tribute to a man who helped shape the wrestling landscape, but perhaps his greatest legacy is the cautionary tale his life became. His story serves as a reminder of the physical toll that professional wrestling, especially during its most extreme era, can take on those who dedicate their lives to it. Big John Studd may not have held the WWF Championship, but his impact on professional wrestling cannot be ignored. He was one of the most dominant big men of the 1980s, a key player during wrestling's golden era. His rivalries, presence, and performances helped shape some of the most memorable moments in WWF history. The 1980s wrestling boom was defined by its larger-than-life superstars. Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, and Roddy Piper became global sensations, but villains like Big John Studd were just as important. Without dominant heels, the top stars wouldn't have had anyone to battle against. Studd stood out as one of the best. Unlike many giants who relied purely on intimidation, he had the in-ring skills and storytelling ability to make matches feel important. He wasn't just a massive obstacle, he was a credible opponent who could carry a main event storyline. His most iconic feud was against Andre the Giant. At the time, Andre was seen as the most unstoppable force in wrestling. No one could match his size and dominance until Studd arrived. World Wrestling Federation built their rivalry around one question: could Andre slam Big John Studd? For months, Studd and his manager Bobby Heenan claimed it was impossible. They offered $10,000, later raised to $15,000, to anyone who could lift and slam Studd. This led to their famous Body Slam Challenge at WrestleMania 1. When Andre finally slammed Studd in front of a sold-out Madison Square Garden, the crowd erupted. It was a defining moment in WrestleMania history. Andre grabbed the bag of money and started throwing cash to the fans, only for Heenan to snatch it back. Though Studd lost that match, it cemented his place in history. Without him, one of the most famous moments in wrestling's biggest event wouldn't have happened. After WrestleMania, Studd remained a key figure in WWF. He aligned himself with Bobby Heenan's stable, forming a devastating tag team with King Kong Bundy. Together, they became one of the most feared duos in WWF history. Their biggest feud was against Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. Hogan was the ultimate hero, while Andre had unfinished business with Studd. Fans packed arenas to see these four clash, creating some of WWF's most exciting matchups. One of the most shocking moments of Studd's career came in 1986. After a match against Andre, Studd and Bundy, under Heenan's orders, attacked Andre and cut his hair in the middle of the ring. This moment sent shockwaves through the wrestling world. Fans had never seen Andre humiliated like that before, making Studd an even bigger villain. Despite his success, Studd isn't always included in conversations about wrestling's greatest big men. One reason is that he never had a defining singles title reign. Championships often help cement legacies, and while Studd was dominant, he was never put in a position to be the top champion. Instead, he was booked as a monster to be conquered. His role was to make heroes like Hogan and Andre look unbeatable, rather than to be the face of the company. While this was a necessary role, it meant that Studd never had a Hogan-style moment where he was the undisputed star of the show. Another reason Studd isn't as widely remembered is his early retirement. He stepped away from wrestling in 1987, just before WWF's biggest explosion in popularity. Had he stayed, he might have had a major match at WrestleMania 3, possibly against Andre or another rising star. Instead, he faded out just as the company reached new heights. Even though Studd doesn't always get the recognition he deserves, his influence can be seen in many of the giants who followed. Wrestlers like Big Show, Braun Strowman, and even Omos owe part of their careers to the groundwork Studd helped lay. Before Studd, giants in wrestling were often just attractions, big men used for short-term appeal. But Studd proved that a giant could be a consistent main event player, someone who could be involved in long-term storytelling and create emotional investment from fans. His rivalry with Andre set the stage for every David vs. Goliath matchup that followed. It laid the blueprint for Undertaker vs. Kane, Brock Lesnar vs. Big Show, and Batista vs. the Great Khali. Even today, big men versus big men matches still follow the formula that Studd helped popularize. In 2004, WWE posthumously honored Big John Studd with an induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. His son, John Minton Jr., accepted the award, ensuring that his father's contributions would never be forgotten. Though he passed away too soon, Studd's career still holds a special place in wrestling history. He was one of the first giants to be taken seriously as a top competitor, proving that size alone wasn't enough. You also needed the skill, psychology, and presence to captivate an audience. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think Big John Studd is one of the most underrated giants in wrestling history? Or was he exactly where he belonged in the industry? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into wrestling history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more legendary stories. Your support helps us continue bringing you the best wrestling content.